The approach was to literally go as broad as possible and to carpet bomb as much as possible. This year, at some point, one single page, 1 month, did 1 million click, one page. Now that there is a prospect that some pocket of traffic will go away, despite all the hype on social media, traffic is all-time high, we continue to grow. There are some pockets of traffic that the user experience will shift more towards getting recommendation, maybe from some LLMs. In those pockets of traffic, probably when you look back and say, okay, what if we have 1 year left of this type of traffic? You find out that you can do better on those visits and those customers.
Hello and welcome to the Exposure Ninja podcast. Joining us today is the architect behind one of the world's most formidable organic growth strategies. As head of organic growth at Wise, Fabrizio Ballarini has spent a decade scaling the platform from its early SEO roots to the global powerhouse that it is today. Today, he leads a sophisticated operation spanning engineering, technical SEO, and M&A that drives millions of visits across 160 plus markets for the multi-billion-dollar fintech leader. Fabrizio, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's great to chat. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. I would like to start by saying congratulations on your 10-year tenure that you've just hit at Wise, a whole decade. How's it feel?
Yeah, I mean, on a daily basis, there's no difference, right? In the sense that we have a constant array of problems regularly that we try to solve, and then it's just nice sometimes to look back and reflect on what happened on some targets that we had. We were probably doing it more earlier in the journey, right? So I remember when we first started our editorial process to create content on blog, we had this 1 million visit a month target, and so we kept looking back and see how the journey to that milestone went. But then after you pass certain milestones, then you're like, we just keep going, and and there is less like retro on such a long scale, right? Also, a lot has happened, right? So, our traffic and the wealth of real estate that we have built on the web is significantly higher right now. So it's in the last few years the traffic skyrocketed further. So it's really hard to compare also what it was like. People ask me at work, right? How does it feel? What is different? Obviously, the differences are quite obvious in terms of like team and the structure. Also, what we know that we didn't know, right? So, like right now, everything, at least in the area that we have done for a while, some like set of landing pages, product calculators, some stuff has been out for almost a decade now, and
Wow.
so we have a ton of data, and we really have confidence on what's happening. So that is very different from before, where I was more me dreaming
Yeah.
and throwing a number on a spreadsheet that I hoped it was going to be okay. So I think that's the main difference, right? That we are probably more sophisticated in the way that we do stuff. Because of the data that we have, and B, because eventually each team that look after each area of our within a growth team has built more depth, more people that are sophisticated on like the analysis, as opposed to before that until we built majority of the website, we didn't know how well it would have gone in each area. At the beginning, the approach was to literally go as broad as possible and to carpet bomb as much as possible a lot of different avenues, because we thought that we knew through search tools and all sort of data points what was going where there was traffic, right, and where we could find distribution, but we didn't know how well that traffic was going to convert. We didn't know how successful we would have been in getting there. So we said, okay, why don't we? And we were often, kindly suggested by people in the business, and to try to be a bit more narrow and focused rather than spreading so thin at the beginning. But I think eventually it was the good idea because like literally in the first quarter or two, we launched maybe something like 60% on what we have now, right? And then obviously throughout the years we have scaled them, we have developed them further, but we like compared to now, like the how thin we were spread early days, it was like insane. And also, with me having no clue about some topics, and engineers being at their first iteration of maybe building our CMS and stuff like that. So that was probably one thing that when I look back, I don't regret that we would have, like in the topic of trying to front load the investment, trying to go as broad as possible, without doing crazy stuff, right? Like, but within what was reasonable, we tried, and then throughout the year there was an exercise of refining what went well. So like any kind of a product or like a series of content that started to perform, we went more aggressive on those, and we continue to invest to the point that these days some of these are an actual team. And But then obviously we had to keep at wave. I think the hardest thing then when we were sitting on a relatively large amount of pages and traffic on the website was to figure out whether we kept building new versus improving what we had. There's one aspect that today with changes in the search landscape and this little scare of will traffic keep coming from from Google, that probably like is really hard to say, but there are two consideration here. One is for sure we had million of visits to Wise website, and um, now that there is a prospect that some pocket of traffic will go away, is not practically the case yet, right? So despite all the hype on social media, our traffic is all time high, we continue to grow. But there are some pocket of traffic that the user experience will shift more towards getting recommendation maybe from some LLMs. And in those pockets of traffic, probably when you look back, or if you put a clock and say, okay, what if we have 1 year left of this type of traffic, you find out that you can do better on those visits and those customers. What I mean by that is because we kept growing traffic and because we kept getting more and more visits to the website, we were a bit discounting the fact that like not all of them were becoming a Wise customer.
Mhm.
And now I'm a bit more, then the plan with the teams are a bit different in the sense that we have more initiatives that are gearing towards that front. It's not that before we didn't care about improving the conversion rate of a page, right? Like, so the team own end to end the experience, so that was part of the job even before. But there was a bit more. They were a bit more relaxed on that topic, and as opposed to now that I think any brand, and particularly brand that maybe don't provide the last mile service or product to the customer, need to find a way to definitely de-risk distribution through search, right? For us is a bit different in the sense that if at some point you want to send money across the world, you have to eventually use Wise and use our products and pass through our payment infrastructure. But then if you are like a company that is somehow in between the user and our services, clearly the urgency of trying to get the user on your own properties and to rely less on them keep searching again and again and again is probably a bit higher than what it used to be. You can see this sometimes even when you go to comparison sites or when you go to those type of aggregators that not all of them, but some of them I've noticed they are more aggressive on making you log in straight away, which
Mhm.
probably kills quite massively that conversion rate when it comes to showing people what the comparison is and what the services are, right? Because they are gating quite a way sooner than they would have done. But then in that way they kind of manage to own the customer a bit better, as opposed to, the day you just rely on Google search plus landing on a page, the customer tomorrow, if you disappear from the internet, probably is not going to miss you, right? Like, and there are some aspect of that search experience that is not the same as having like an app installed on your phone, or maybe having a logged in experience that is more meaningful to you, right? So I think that's one aspect. The other aspect, though, is in the context of growing a company further and to keep accelerating growth, is the aspect of keep building new stuff, to the point that we ended up even building, and we are still building, user acquisition, even beyond what the product team advisors build. So we have experiences that currently, both on wise.com as well as other domain that we operate, we have experiences that don't, and being content comparison, whatever you might think of that type of web product, that go beyond what your brand is doing now, with the view that when we will do that type of service, we have acquisition ready. And also, over time, we kind of de-risk the previous products, the previous pocket of traffic, mostly because, at some point when you get maximum click share in a given area, that's about it, right? Like, so, like, the only thing you can do is to build either another cluster of queries that you perform on, or eventually having more website for the same cluster of queries, either through affiliates or other websites that you own. But basically, these are the way to eventually grow your footprint, right? So on that aspect, we continue. There are quarters where the team is more or less focused on this, but I think we have still a healthy level, and you might think that, okay, this is normal, but actually many times you see a lot of like companies that they have the same website for the last
Mm-hmm.
5 years, right? If not more. By same website, I mean, like, same categories, same, area of content that they cover, and so on. And you realize that then building new content and new experiences, is not the norm always, because some people, they stop to, imagine my company is just selling shoes. I will build acquisition for shoes, but then I'm not going to build acquisition for something else in that kind of streetwear category. But as we try to build acquisition a bit broader than what we have, a little bit, because the more we touch the customer at any point in time in their journey, even though it's not necessarily against our product line, the more we can build a relationship with them, and still be useful to them. And the other aspect is to be ready in case we do launch certain product lines. So when I started, we were in the opposite situation, where we were basically playing catch up, right? So we were,
Mm-hmm.
trying to build acquisition for maybe a corridor or a country that Wise was launching. We were not live yet in that country. And then one day, the product manager of that country was coming and say, "Hey, we are live in, I don't know, money to Nigeria, or like any other country that we launched throughout the years." And then we're like, "Yeah, but we have no customers at the moment," and then we have no acquisition for those customers, which is normal, right? I think is,
Yeah.
99% of the cases is that. But and also what was happening, and this is quite specific to Wise, but I think in other industries you have as well, because of licensing, you might have more or less open a service might be more or less open. What I mean by that is that, maybe we were allowed to send money to Nigeria from UK, but then we had to stop because of the licensing situation, and then we had to turn it on again. So we literally get to a point where we started to become quite agnostic on what we could serve as a customer, but we started to build acquisition beyond that, so that if tomorrow someone was launching, I don't know, we launched India, right? Like in terms of like product, a while ago, but not the very early days. But it was already years and years that we were receiving traffic from India on a lot of categories that we knew that we were going to care about, right?
Yeah.
obviously, when you look at it and you are pitching that the expenditure to the business, uh, most of the time people would be like, okay, why are you spending money and time and people on something that we don't even have, right? And I understand that the case study can be hard at times. In our case, we got to the point where the investment in organic growth was such a good investment from a payback perspective compared to maybe other initiatives that we run, right? From affiliates to paid media to anything, influencers, anything else. That we had pretty much a bonus with our finance team that was basically allowing us to be way more ambitious, because it's not that every day you find new avenues to drive growth organically, and then we want to almost risk a bit more than what we generally don't. And I appreciate that if you are in a company is a bit harder sometimes to justify. But then if you're in a fast growing company, I think in general that ambition should be there, because like if you're in any fast growing startup, probably what the plan says in the even in the short term says adding more product, adding more services. So this generally is the case, right? Like, so we just got
Yeah.
really good at betting, if that makes sense.
I've got a question for you on this because you mentioned to me before that ultimately in your role, you don't care about anything other than what drives the business revenue, what drives the business growth. And in SEO, it's really easy, I think, to get lost in traffic and rankings. Have you ever had to decide to kill a project that you thought had potential if you didn't think it was going to move the needle for the bottom line? Or are you more likely to just risk trying something to see if it
Um,
does result in revenue?
Yeah, yeah. No, like, so first of all, if we are 100% sure that something is not gonna move, what you describe as revenue for us is basically new customer acquisition, North Star, multiplied by the lifetime value of those customers, which gives us a contribution margin goal that we have, but it's broadly, you could, convert it to revenue. And so we have a level of so as I mentioned earlier, we don't know, especially when we jump into a new vertical, whether that is going to work, right? So that absolutely, if we have 100% confidence before starting that that is not going to move revenue, we don't do it, right? But seems stupid, but sometimes people do it anyway, right? So like, we had other type of instances in other team, maybe not in the search team, but I don't know. I work also with the team that is scaling our presence on social media, and as well as partnership with creators. There are creators deal that convert good amount of customers. There are creator deals that already upfront. You can tell that is not going to do that, right? So that discipline is important, but then eventually in SEO is not a big problem. So back to your question, we always risk, right? So like the percentage of risk has decreased compared throughout the years, right? So if quarter one was 100% risk, quarter year two, three, four was maybe 50-50. Now each area and team has got maybe a 80-20, right? Like doing more of what we know that will drive because
Yeah.
obviously they have to pay the bill on a quarterly, monthly basis, versus the level of exploration that they keep. I'm just giving you a broad rule, right? It could be that maybe some people in some teams are still significantly more aggressive than that. So the risk is always there. And then the next question is probably, what do we do when stuff doesn't work, right? Like, do
Mhm.
we
Yeah.
kill it, or do we keep it? On that one, there are many people, especially maybe in the search industry, that at times they have advocated for like removing what doesn't work, or by doesn't work I mean doesn't convert it into revenue, right? Like the fact that we create content that is performing in search and generates traffic is not given, but is very likely, right? So I think either because we perfection this quite a bit, or either because we have a nice domain, but generally it works, right? If when we decide to do something, how well it works is questionable depending on how we execute it, right? But we generally don't kill what doesn't work. And this has been good for two reasons. Like, again, one, with the same logic that we explained before, maybe what doesn't work today is going to work in few years time.
Mhm.
And as long as the customer is finding value in what we have built, and obviously this doesn't require crazy maintenance costs, right? So an example of maintenance cost is if you have a landing experience with an editorial article, um, it goes as far as it goes in terms of cost, right? You have created that article, it's static content, you might need to update it, but that's okay. If you have a landing experience with a price comparison product, that behind the scene you have to collect price comparison data that is extremely hard and very engineering intensive. In that area, we don't just keep pages up for fun, right? Like that's a different consideration. But generally, we keep content live because A, we might need that content in future. The more we expand our breadth of product and use cases for the customer, and B, because eventually we don't like we don't see a reason why something that is useful to customer that still are good customer for us, right? We don't have content about something that is completely far away from the customer experience, right? Is for
Yeah.
our customer, that's what it's made for. It's just that maybe that intent is not very high converting, right? Yeah, or at times what happened as well is that we didn't measure it well. So what I mean by that is we thought that like one intent was not valuable uh, in the near term. So wait 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, no revenue coming out of that set of intent, and then all in a sudden, 1 year down the line, we acquire few customers that do very large transactions, right? And in that case, you are just bad at forecasting projected revenue of customers, right? So again, there have been instances where we're training LTV forecasts, where we're training, the models that we use to predict customer value, because the first day that you join Wise, to us, is you're not generating, unless you buy an expensive villa in Spain on the very first transfer, you're not generating as much revenue as you would over the course of your
Mm.
life with us, right? So like the ability to forecast some of these events from a customer perspective and revenue perspective, at times have improved quite significantly, and actually made us reevaluate a lot of stuff that we had before that was in the dead zone from a, hey, we keep it, but it
Yeah.
doesn't look like that is changing the world, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One of your big assets is the currency converter that you have. I saw you speak at the Spotlight conference last October on it. If anyone hasn't seen, it was a fantastic presentation, which you can find on Fabrizio's YouTube channel now as well. That has been pretty legendary for you in terms of driving traffic and conversions for the tool. For those who haven't seen it, can you explain the philosophy behind why you built that tool and how you've
Yeah,
used it for growth?
yeah, definitely. So first of all, the caveat there is that it's not that we, at that point in time, we invented the internet, right? So there was a website called Exit.com, there was Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg, a bunch of other websites in the finance industry that were providing data on exchange rates, right? Like so. So uh, the the argument for going into that vertical was not as deep as it would be now. It was as simple as, hey, there is a lot of traffic in this area, but the most important one was we better off owning that experience for the customer than delegating that experience to simply just finding like a 2-digit decimal rate on Google, or to go to a website like Yahoo Finance that is geared, was probably sitting in the finance section together with all the stock ticker and all these other trading content, which is maybe was not so easy to understand and so simple to debug for customers for consumer, right? That was our primary is our primary audience. So that was the main insight. Internally, we had a lot of debate on this topic because the business didn't think that it was worth telling some that is a pure informational query, right? Like, so
Mhm.
is very different from people having strong intent of transferring money, like sending money online, money transfer. So, but then the main insight was that the transactional intent are very low, right? So the stuff that you would do PPC on, and we have an opportunity to get a lot of engagement with our customer with this type of queries, and also to educate them on exchange rates, right? Like, the biggest problem that Wise is solving with the growth team is that people don't know that they're being charged by their
Mm.
provider, because generally, banks as well as other, money transfer provider, they have always, pretty much told you that it's free, but then all in a sudden you find less money on the other side, and this is because the rate that they give you is very bad, right? And it's not the actual rate that you would find on Google and in other places. So I think there was an opportunity to educate the customers, and that's why we went into it. But then we were way less sophisticated in understanding the role of that product. To date, the search is still a very strong distribution that we have, but we have a lot of other services connected to that. So, and then fast forward a few years, we got really good at probably the classic SEO, right? Like, in the sense that, what people describe as programmatic SEO, which eventually is basically like an API or a database plus an engineer plus a designer plus like an owner of that experience, right? Being a product manager on SEO, in our case, was an SEO doing that, myself, and then later other people. We got really good at scaling intents and way of searching of customers, because obviously, differently from other type of calculators, right? If you have like a calculator that is, I don't know, something even we have, maybe, or we used to have, there's a PayPal fee calculator that helps you as a merchant to calculate the fee of PayPal. Pretty much everyone in the world Google in a couple of ways, right? Like PayPal fee calculator, and that's about it. As opposed to exchange rates, that you have a lot of languages plus routes that you might be interested, plus amount that you might be interested, plus other type of query related to those exchange rates. So we realized that it was very templatable and very easy to scale templates. By no means duplicate content. Each intent is different. Is the page roughly the same? Yes, but sending £1 million to euro is different than sending £1 to euro. It's like,
Yep.
even from a practical standpoint, right? Like, if you are sending £1 to euro, pretty much any financial provider these days is not going to grill you on that. If you start sending a couple of million, we probably, without predicting what type of KYC and the controls we have on the anti-money laundering, we start asking you a couple of questions, right? Where is the money coming from? That in the past didn't used to be instant. This day, majority of wise transfer are instant as well, even for large amounts, right? But generally, the experience is very different, right? So we over time developed all good acquisition for all these type of queries and experiences, and that's where you do probably the most classic SEO, right? There were aspects of you know we were really obsessed with how much we were getting indexed, how much we were getting crawled, our ability to expand, like our case studies for people applying for those technical role in that team was like ultimately a question that to date we don't have the most comprehensive answer, but it's the most fascinating challenge. That when you do currency calculator, if you have 15 20 languages time 600-700 root combination, adding one amount, so £1, £2, £3, adding one amount add already a million of pages, right? Like it as an exercise, right? And then obviously we are asking people, how can we index more amounts, and how can you eventually do that without tanking the website, right? Because obviously it's not that that type of queries are paying the bill for the entire company. This is just a small part of our acquisition, but so it's an interesting technical challenge that you have to keep in mind while making sure that the rest of the website that is equally, if not more valuable in other area, doesn't completely tank. Because early days we started to put a couple of million URLs on a 20,000 URL website, but then later when you start adding millions and millions, and then you do these multiple languages, at some point we had a question on whether we are going to do the same English page or different English pages? Might seem stupid question, but if you chop a couple of English pages across the world that is still English, you start saving a bunch of million URLs. You start changing the way that things are getting crawled and so on. So these are the type of challenges that we got very deep on from an SEO standpoint. And to date, we continue to work on that. Fascinating that, or maybe we were sleeping, I don't know, but probably 7-8 years into doing it, we found a new intent that it wasn't obvious when we started from European markets, but then when we expanded to other markets globally, we found that there was one intent that we completely missed. So literally, imagine doing something for 10 years, think that you really are core at it, and
How
then
did you find it?
all in a
How did
sudden,
it
no, we started to work a bit deeper on a given market that was working quite well
Yeah.
for the business, and we find out that in that market there was one intent that eventually we replicated elsewhere with decent success, but in that market alone was completely nuts. And to the point that that intent, I think this year at some point, one single page, 1 month did 1 million click one page, right? And so we just like literally usually think about the distribution of traffic across million of pages of the calculator, being like not in the millions per page, otherwise we'll be sitting on Google type of traffic, right? So many pages get not a lot of clicks, right? Like from that perspective, right? But that page alone, one month drove 1 million clicks, and a little bit because of Trump, right? Like that doesn't happen always, but a little bit because that page existed, right? Like so I think there are situations like this that we keep doing SEO, right? We keep doing the type of work that we always did. Will there always be the need to do that? Because if you think about it from an also like engineering perspective, it's not very smart that we have to give Google a single URL per parameter as opposed to them understanding how to play the parameters, right? Like like in other industry, at times Google wants your shopping feed, Google wants your structured data. They don't want to necessarily go through every million page all the times, like so. But this is still the case for our industry. Probably if you fast forward this to the future, this SEO part might even be, the more crawlers of LLMs like ChatGPT and co get aggressive in opening pages to provide answers to user. At some point, some of this stuff might be better that some of these engines communicate via API or via data as opposed to URLs. But to date, even in the Google with AI overviews and all the sophisticated stuff that we have to date, having a different URL still makes a difference. So we have to be quite pragmatic about that. It's not that I love this; it's just a necessity, right, for the user, and then eventually for the user as well, right? Like having a signpost of a given experience at times is useful. So again, it's not just us feeding a bunch of pages to Google, but there is also an element of user experience that if I populated a page with given parameters, and then I pass that page to my friend to show them, hey, look what's going on here with the pound exchange rates. You want to preserve some of this parameter, right? Because this is useful to your friend as opposed to reconfigure the intent completely. So I think that's the SEO that we do. And then like probably in the last few years, what we got significantly better off was we did a lot of quarters of work with engineers that were not geared at all towards more traffic. To some extent, we are a bit subject to the wind in some of those areas as well. What I mean by that is the demand of currencies and customers is not that seasonal and is not that predictable, right? So I was making the Trump example. Unfortunately, our product is receives spikes of demand on given events, macro events, right? Not necessarily negative events, but any macro event does something to our demand, right? So there are aspects that it's not that we can control, and like we're like, oh yeah, I'm selling shoes and I will sell more shoes on Black Friday. That's generally how it will work. But in our case, it's very unpredictable. So what we try at certain quarter to work on is to that experience of those pages, right? So we don't know we know how to predict traffic, we know a bunch of things, but we cannot influence that massively. But we know that we can improve what the customers engage on, right? So we can build better notification products attached to that. We can improve our comparison experience attached to that, and this is like the stuff that is harder, right? Like, so at some point, many other companies in our space realized that you could get a lot of traffic through this calculator. Um, Clearly, the appetite for the traffic is different, right? Because some pages that might be okay to us to build maybe are not okay for someone else, because the cost reward of building those pages is not good for them, right? So, but generally a bunch of people have copied these certain approaches that we did, right? So so we have certain part, forget about the currency calculator, but think about any type of successful traffic acquisition landing page. Pretty much everyone in the industry is, you know, there are only a few people that maybe have innovated on a couple of intent that we're not so good at, but generally people tend to follow that. And then the work that we do is on the very hard part, is that, you know, the really interesting value that we try to provide on this type of experiences is not necessarily just tell you the rate that you could find broadly in other providers with some level of detail, but we try to give you data that is not accessible anywhere else, and that is really painful, right? In the case of the FX industry, it's not like flights. But then I learn also from people that come from the flight industry that not all the data in flights is easy accessible. There's a bunch of scraping going on there as well. But think about knowing the exchange rate of the various banks around the world and being able to compare that in real time accurately, and then to tell customers where they're actually paying more than not, as opposed to, you know, some of these providers pretending to be free. That is really hard, right? And needs engineering and needs a lot of work on the UI, needs a lot of understanding of the customer and how they perceive the rate. We iterated on those tables thousands of times. Sometimes I go to the team and say, you know, like, I've seen this before, right? Like, you're unlucky that I've been here for so long that I've seen this table layout 6 years ago, and we then changed it. Why are we going back to it, right? But then, you know, each time we run quite good experiments, and each time we try to validate why that choice at this point in time is a good choice, right, from a user
Yeah.
comprehension standpoint. And this is the work that we do a lot these days that we were probably discounting early days, right? The first version of comparison many years ago, that was probably year 2 of us doing this, was me collecting a couple of data point manually and then sticking a picture that I didn't design, but I kind of, the design team would have not approved, sticking a picture on a page, right? Like, and it's very different from having like million of data points of all the provider and calculating what the rates are and so on. So there obviously a lot of stuff has evolved for the good, right? And hopefully the goal, back to the Google distribution topic, the goal is that at some point, you know, or already to date, we have like a good portion of customers that use this product despite of Google serving those products, right? Like, so
Yeah.
we want you to come, and sometimes they use this product even though they're not Wise customer. So we have some people that ultimately, you know, there are providers that at any point in time do promotions and do discounted rates way more aggressively than we do, because we always try to give you generally the cheapest rate that we can, the cheapest fee that we can do. And there are providers that do very heavy discount, and at times transparently we show them as cheaper than us on our comparison experience. So some of our customers, or some of the customers that we share with other providers, they use our product to decide what to do, and they trust that product. So we have that customer anyway, right? Like, if today we are not the cheapest, there's nothing we can do, right? We'd rather not lie to that customer. But then we have these customers are sold into using that experience, so that you know, our product team will catch up and will build will build cheaper offering on a given corridor. But then we still own the customer relationship when we provide
Mhm.
useful product, and hopefully people you know, come back to this product regardless of whether today we win the Google game of being ranked relatively high in Google, right? So that is our best way, you know, and that we have been way before LLMs, that we have started to de-risk this type of acquisition, because the only thing that can happen when you build very solid acquisition through one channel is that you invest a lot in that area, and then that acquisition goes away, and then what do we do, right? Like, so I think often in search we were way less fussy about owning the customer experience. We were just okay with them touching a landing page and then converting at some point, right? I think these days it requires a little bit more input, and maybe is in the form of what they find on ChatGPT and other services, right? In the same ways you get an answers from like an LLM chat assistant, we could basically train like a similar type of model with our own data, with our own content, and you having that answer on our real estate, right? Without having to re-enter the lottery on Google, which is, is a very good lottery in the sense that, if you build valuable website, and the beauty of Google search organically is that compared to social media, you constantly get results when you put in effort to work on certain area. Social media is quite different, right? Like we have investment on creators, and the same happens in my weekend when I learn how to become a creator to guide that team. The same exact video that I kind of publish every few weeks that I know that makes a couple of million views. There is the week where it doesn't do a couple of
Mhm.
million views, and that gets me really, 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 really demoralized. And it shows you that the correlation between the effort that you put in and the result is not so flat. Like it's not so linear as much as it in search, where generally up to now we might be hit on click-through rate in some queries, but up to now more pages, more traffic, more user experiences for customers equal more revenue, right? And more reward in
Mhm.
that front. Yeah.
And do you have a plan B for if you were to see organic traffic from Google drop? Is that something that you keep in mind? Is it something that you think won't happen?
um I think in some pocket of traffic it will definitely happen. um and uh, and but then even on those pockets of traffic, there's always a way to have the same type of traffic with a lens that is specific to your brand, right? So let me give you one example. If you're relocating to Singapore next few months, we you might read out to relocate to Singapore, right? And that's content that pretty much anyone could be writing about, right? Like, and anyone could be teaching you, the ins and outs of doing that. You could be start chatting to an LLM to on how to do that. The value that the content back in time was pure acquisition, right? Where we were basically using that to then tell you, hey, by the way, when you relocate to Singapore, you will have a problem of having like a bank account in all these countries, and Wise instantly as a UK customer allows you to have a Singapore account and so on. So that part, probably there is headroom to write an article that is more specific to the experience in conjunction to Wise and what Wise does and what Wise. And in the past, we were not so good at it, and becoming good at that part, it might seem obvious, but at times is really important, because if you don't provide the information about that, your service in conjunction to even a very, not so valuable intent like that one, is harder that other people will provide that information,
Mhm.
right? Like, so they could rewrite it the day that you have provided those information, or the LLM could go on your help center and all your product pages and try to distill those information for the customer. But there's also room sometimes to do it yourself. So, but yet the click through rate in some of those pocket of traffics will sink quite dramatically. I think.
Mhm.
When is hard to predict. The bit that doesn't add up in the current situation is that if you are an established brand, the impact of let's say even AI overviews, the impact of ChatGPT, I think is close to zero, right? Like it's this one digit percentage impact on your overall acquisition and revenue. The impact of AI overviews can be more. right? But it's not as big as, at least for us in certain query types, is not as big as like some people think that it is, right? And sometimes you can see this when you look at the revenue. um we you even lose pocket of, like, you even lose visits, but sometimes the revenue in certain area remains kind of there, right? So there are some intents that maybe you don't complete on the website, but eventually if you want to send money you have to come to Wise, right? Like from that perspective. So the plan B in my view is that probably, A is to, I mean, I would start from the plan A. Plan A for us and for many people is to be pragmatic on what is still there, right? So
Yeah.
there are many websites out there that even lost, I've seen, and we operate a lot of domains that at times have beyondwise.com that at times lose 50% of traffic. And but if you do the math, 50% less traffic on something that was 10 times better than running ads on Meta on Google, it's still better to have it than not. And our finance team doesn't care whether there is AI overview or not. Obviously, we have to tune forecast in some area, but in practice, it's still a decent investment in some area. And then also, up until the traffic becomes zero and is not feasible for you to maintain certain experiences, I think is it makes sense to keep investing in them and trying to squeeze more out of it. That's something that we were not doing before. Um, if you're a new brand, though, this is not something that you can do because obviously you are trying to find your way through the internet and get people to learn about you. So this is for established brand. For the future, again, established brand, um, definitely, like the acquisition needs to be, and this is something that we started way before LLMs. It actually probably couple of years, 1 year, 1 year, two before LLMs, we started to diversify quite heavily on Google acquisition just because we had too much of it compared to maybe other area. And so that part of diversification is healthy to do. It still doesn't solve the problem of search. Um, I think that some intents, whether you're using ChatGPT or whether that we see how adoption of people will happen. My father last night asked me what it is, right? So there's clearly one person that doesn't use ChatGPT yet, and so there's like we'll see how adoption of these of all these chat assistant will happen in actual numbers, and then how much the search experience on those will be different from the search experience that we had on Google. What I mean by that is that day one you add a pure chat, literally a WhatsApp chat type of experience without even images to some extent. But now certain layouts, think about the shopping and all the agentic commerce, a lot of layouts are becoming more similar to the layout that we had in Google search, right? So from that perspective, there probably could be also a shift in maybe where people are searching, but then will the search experience be wildly different to what we see in Google search? We'll have to see how these evolve. An example being is that it's not that Google put links to website for fun, right? they do that because it has value to the user, right? Like and in many other instances, I was actually Googling a brand query, and someone has pointed this out on Twitter as well. um, Sometimes in some of these LM models, you're actually doing a brand query that is almost is a navigational intent, and you don't find a way to click through the website. So they'll have to fix that, right? I don't think that is very sustainable in terms of user experience, because I get annoyed and then I go back to Google, right? And hoping that Google will still show me very classic search. So we'll have to see. But then imagine in the scenario that even the click out changes significantly. I think that my friend Dawn Anderson and some people that have been in the game for a while, her point was that eventually the exercise of information retrieval remains, and in order to do information retrieval, there needs to be some information that you offer to engines, right? Like, so the part of doing the reasoning after you have collected the information and you have processed the information, is the aspect that we didn't have before, right? So you want to buy a vacuum cleaner, you are finding a lot of vacuum cleaner, but you are not easily finding a spreadsheet that was categorizing them by the spec that you like, in the way that you like, by just typing a question. So that part is new and is different. But then the part of providing the data on which vacuum cleaners and which specs you have, similar to us, providing you wise fee, wise exchange rates, doing this with all the competitive data that we have, that exercise is going to be the same, right? So whether the layout of that page is going to be like a 10 blue link and clicking on the landing page, or it's going to be a chat experience that we may even offer soon on our own services, is a bit irrelevant, right? Like, we still have engineers and we still have people that are building the data in the back, that are building the product, right? So we will probably change a bit how we work, right? We Search will not be purely like a page index, crawl index, traffic, and that's it. There's probably going to be a nightmare of attribution, right? Like, so
Yeah.
what everyone is not talking about is the fact that 10,000% increase on AI visibility means zero revenue when you look at attribution models, right? So you can be as hyped as you like about your increased AI visibility, but no one is ever publishing a half of a chart that shows how this is impacting the actual revenue attributed by marketing channel, by growth channel. For sure, if you are in a startup that has got zero customer, and all in a sudden, thanks to a couple of ChatGPT prompts, you get 10 customers, happy days, right? But if you are in companies like Wise that you're already acquiring, hundreds of thousands of customers each week, um, like it is an attribution challenge, because a lot of journeys that in the past were landing straight to given landing pages. We done some analysis as well. We have not published this, but and other people did as well, on how much traffic from LLM goes to homepage versus going to in specific pages, right? So this alone creates an attribution problem, because a simple way to isolate the impact of the search team from other type of teams was the fact that if you were landing on a page that was considered, let's say, an SEO page that we have built because of SEO, we are attributing this effort to the SEO team, and the creation of that page was attributed to that investment and that cost center. As opposed to you landing on the homepage after I've completing that query on a chat, as opposed to reading our article, means that we'll know that you land to that page. We probably, unless any additional privacy, apocalypse happen, we know that you come from that LLM, but we don't know which page and which type of content that we have made has helped you to complete that
Mm.
query. So you basically entered the situation that to date many paid media channels are in. So I'm thinking about our paid display investment. I'm thinking about our paid social investment, where the click out from platforms like Meta has been reduced dramatically in the last years. What they used to have, I'm not super pro, but they used to be something called advanced analytics, where you could match emails, IP, or a lot of stuff with user to basically do attribution, is gone because of privacy. So basically, you run a bunch of advertising, or you have a bunch of user doing LLM searches, and then they will all show up on the homepage, and then you will need to do some marketing mix modeling with a lot of finger in the air to try to guess where to attribute that effort, and that becomes really hard, because it can still prove the value, and we have good success. Our analyst team is pretty good at this. We have good success in dissecting channels that land to homepage without knowing what they
Mm-hmm.
were, exposed to before that. The tricky bit is, so we eventually reward the channel, but then the tricky bit is that the people who operate that channel don't know what they got rewarded for, right? So as opposed to before, you knew that the person working in the German market creating that set of content was responsible exactly thanks to the set of content for that revenue that was coming. So the attribution challenge is going to be significantly harder. I think that if people advance in this area, probably it will help also justifying more work on LLMs and AI visibility. If not, I have someone pitching me a tool every other second. Literally, I have 3 pitch a day on someone offering me that tool.
Yeah,
Uh,
me
and
too.
yeah, you know what I mean. And I got nothing against them, but I just, I'm not their VC. I don't care whether it goes well or not. And some of these tools probably are guys who are building LLM agent for content could make them in a weekend, I would say. And the other aspect is that until someone is able to stitch revenue to it, at some point it will be hard pitch, right? So it's easy to get pinged on day one by your executives to tell you that, hey, there is AI, what are you doing about AI, and get them to commit some few thousand dollars worth of tool to try to investigate that area. Is very hard to scale that, right? And say, oh, by the way, next year I'm going to pay something that does LLM visibility £1 million, right? Because of like something that I will not be able to attribute, not even to my channel. So I think that's the really hard part. And it's not that I hope that we're gonna solve it, right? And I hope that the people that are building these tools as well will advance on this topic as well, so that the companies are able to justify, because for some company, the funny thing is that for us, we're gonna continue to do the same in terms of providing products and content to our customers, right? I told my team that we have millions of customers. Worst case, we send them an email with the article that you wrote, right? But if you have no customers, many marketers will need to start creating value on the internet, uh, with the view that this will be consumed in different ways that it was consumed before and distributed differently than it was distributed before. And if you don't find a way to attribute that over time, there is a risk that you might be struggling to keep investing in that. We'll see also when the various platform. I think it's good that ChatGPT, OpenAI is launching ads, because usually having ads also gives you a framework to because part of offering an ad product has to come with tracking because
Some kind of analytics,
yeah,
yeah,
I
of
mean,
performance.
the ad product is that you can do like this and spend £1 million. So you need to be able to track something, right?
Yeah.
So I think that will also maybe help the people in the organic space to get a better sense of what the equivalent visibility might be worth, right? At
Mhm.
time, if that is the case. Yet the challenges remain, right? Like, so what I mean by the challenge remain is that. The more you increase personalization, and we saw this even with Google, right? So, for instance, Google, the traditional 10 blue links, we learn how to operate a bit less with the queries and operate more with pages, right? Like, so we knew that that page was worth building. Over time, the more the personalization would happen, also query rewriting, another aspect of the personalized query, the less you knew that was that very exact query driving revenue, right? So like we have keyword not provided in SEO since, I don't know, I was still working in agency, so probably before 2012 it started maybe to kick off years earlier, and then it got really really a lot later. But you know what I mean, like there are
Mm.
shifts that you do in the way that you work, and we're still alive, right? We still build massive web portals, even though we didn't have by keyword attribution against the
Mm.
pages. So there will be things that maybe people can learn over time, and they can then justify doing work. I'm talking primarily for new companies, because new companies, I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone in a company that has got like a homepage and 2 articles on what the product is. You have to invest in growth,
Mhm.
and there are obviously various ways to grow organically beyond just SEO, right? You can work on your referral friend program, you can work on a lot of other type of content on social platforms. So there are ways to find distribution, but with regards to search, you will need a bit more, methodology to be able to invest. Or otherwise, you need to be in a scenario that you treat certain activities like brand marketing, in the sense that you don't put performance number to it. Someone gives you a bunch of money that you try to spend in a sensible way, But then in that case, you again, you're always subject to someone defining for you how much you want to invest, as opposed to you having the advantage that we had, that we still have to date actually, is that we can go back to our finance partner with a business, with a model that is reliable and can scale, right? If that happens, we keep getting more resources, right, and more
Yeah.
people.
And at the moment then, your team, do you have a system for checking what ChatGPT and LLMs are saying about you? Do you fact check anything they say about Wise, or do you just let it be?
So think about all the million of visits that gets Wise, which means million of pages, which means thousand and thousand of product landing pages, articles. It doesn't make any sense to check them all, right? Like, and to check all the type of intents. The area that we are more interested in is the brand area. What I mean by that is, if in the middle of a conversation, you with any model, you are discussing a topic that we have content for, and more or less we get mentioned, or more or less that answer is thanks to our content, we don't care too much at this point, because we still have a justification for writing that content anyway, regardless of whether this happens or not. On the brand, what I mean by brand is maybe what you refer to fact checking, in the sense that, I noticed, for instance, that the ability of certain model to get, Google got really good with like crawling and indexing and understanding the freshness of the content, to the point that you could trust almost blindly, like probably 99% fair rate, like success rate, that the content that you are served and the pages that you are served were the best and the last version of it. This doesn't always happen with all the models we have seen, and that is a bit scary, because obviously, as a brand, you don't want someone to know what your price was 2 days ago, 2 months ago. You want them to know exactly what your price is now. You want them to know whether that feature is available, in which shape is available now. And not all the finance products that we have are very easy to describe, so we want you to understand it well. And I think that's the area that I think is more valuable. So, like investing in fact checking if the information that the various model have about you and where they get those informations is fresh and accurate.
Mm.
Especially, for Wise, in the sense that our mission is to drop price for our customers, right? So every quarter or every 6 months, max, we reprice, and we try to keep dropping prices for our customers. We're not always successful doing that. Sometimes we raise the bid, sometimes we lower it a bit more. But if you look it on a trajectory, we have been able to keep dropping price. Our mission is to eventually price zero, the more we scale our customer base. And having the price of a quarter ago often means that we are being overquoted against what the real price is, right? And if you don't land on the page where you can check the live price on our properties, then is obviously misrepresenting what the advantages of using Wise against something else. So that area I think is valuable. And whether you're going to be doing that by querying the models yourself, or by using proxies to query the models, like some of the visibility tools are doing,
Mhm.
I'm still 50-50 on that. I don't think we have a 100% solid answer, right, on this. We'll see. We need to test more. But that area, yes, that area I think is holds value, because the day that, again, in the past you were relying on, think about the very classic Google search 20 plus years ago. Google didn't understand the content of your page, right? So
Mm.
they couldn't tell what your page was about. They knew that there were some keywords that were relevant to your query, and then they knew that there were some links pointing to that page. So when you had the problem, some links to the page and some keyword about that problem was the best answer to that
Mhm.
problem. Then you fast forward, Google was significantly better with, way before like transformers and all the LLM stuff in understanding the content of a page. And that's why, they could understand quite well what your page is about. But now there's a next level. You can ask a large language model to think about what's on the page and to perform some action to draw some conclusion about seeing page number one, page number two, and what's the best between the two. So
Mhm.
the more the model will be sophisticated and they will be able to answer to perform that exercise that is nothing to do with search, is basically thinking after, right? Is doing what I was doing and that I got lazy about. Is the information retrieval happens broadly in the same way to some extent, but then the thinking about the two services when choosing service one or service two, that is changing, right? Like, so you can delegate this to LLM. So if LLM get increasingly better at doing that reasoning, the only thing that I worry about is that they have the wrong information about my brand, right? Like, I
Mhm.
don't care if I have many other pages that says that I'm amazing. If ultimately I price 100 and someone price 110, I'm cheaper than them, right? So
Mhm.
um, it's quite hard to, I don't know, maybe there will be some model that will be so biased and they will hate my brand so much that they'll get them off wrong, right? But in general, you have to understand that most likely, I mean, we have to hope rather than understand. We have to hope that most likely they'll get it right, right? The only scenario where they will get it wrong is the scenario where I would prefer that you delegate that reasoning to my model and to my property. So, your brand having the equivalent of a chat product, most likely powered by similar system where you control a bit more the narrative, right? You start training the model and telling them, oh, my brand is amazing, right? Always suggest my brand, right? Clearly that is not going to go very far, but it could avoid maybe some issues with if some model are really biased against certain things. And we are testing this as well, in the sense that you can see, so if you go deep on a query and you go 3 4 levels down of questioning that answer, certain models, they have a way of, or maybe they don't have the data and they are like, oh yeah, it must be like that, but actually they have not provided you a factual evidence that is like that,
Mhm.
and they have that data, right? So there are instances where there could be an issue even though they know the right thing about you, that they are missing the information about the other provider
Mhm.
that you are comparing against, and or they might get the comparison wrong because they got trained in a way that they think that is not possible to achieve, but actually I have the data about that second provider. And maybe the job sometimes would also be not just to do that exercise for yourself, but also do that exercise for everyone else that you want that comparison experience to be correct about, because you assume that your direct competitors do the same job that you do in exposing their information on the web, right? So the
Yeah.
classic, incumbent banks doesn't publish publicly very happily all their exchange
Mhm.
rates. That's why the price comparison team is making a hell of a effort to collect those data points, right? Like, so there are situations like this where that is worth going into. That if fixed at scale, they can provide a lot of value in the way that the reasoning happen post the retrieval of the information. Yeah, I think that's the stuff that is obvious that will be valuable.
Mhm.
When it's not about me and the customer is asking, hey, I'm a wise customer, how do I boil an egg today? This is very extreme, right? But think about some intent that are tangentially relevant to your brand but not about your brand. I think is probably less possible, or
Mhm.
less interesting to completely shape that, and also a bit hard to monitor at scale, because or maybe you will be doing it for the intents that are really valuable to you, in the same way many years ago, and to date we are not tracking the entirety of our keywords, right? So Wise ranks for so many keywords that that is not that we can track them all. We have tried at times to go completely nuts and say, okay, in this product we try to track this month million of keywords, but then at some point the learning is very fuzzy, right? Like also the more you go broad and the more you go you increase that pool of intent that you monitor, the more even doing something like share of voice become very volatile. So like at that point, you basically have a share of voice that fluctuates too heavily on a on a on a semi-regular basis that basically doesn't draw a lot of conclusion.
Hmm.
Yeah, or makes it very hard to really say, oh my god, we got better at visibility, right? The more you go broad, the more it's a bit difficult to do it. But I think there will be efficiencies. I've seen that already some tools have increased significantly the number of intents that they can query for you at a cost that is reasonable, right? I find bizarre that if you have to pay $200 for 200 keywords, like in the past I would have not paid that money for the same amount of keywords, right? So it's very hard to justify at some point. So I think the more some of these provider will find a way to scale the quantity that they monitor, maybe would be worth doing more quantity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But
This has been absolutely amazing to hear all your insights. Thank you for sharing so much from your decade at Wise plus your experience beyond that. I have a final question, Fabrizio, and I can't wait to hear your answer. If you could send a text message back to yourself the day that you started your career, what growth advice would you send?
that's really hard. Um,
Yeah, it's really hard.
um, I think that yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately what I did in the last years, I was very curious about many things, very different from each other. Even the way we do search is probably a mix of interest that I built over time, right? So we don't do search just with wise.com. We do search with affiliates. We do search with the portfolio brands. And these were always at times curiosity that I had that I didn't just let go, and I actually did something about that myself. Because often, when you're curious about something, it's not that you can ask someone else to do it for you, right? So just go and do it, right? And then often you will. Most of the time, it was okay. There were a few instances that my curiosity and my so-called side project turned into nothing. At some point, we built a news website, so we got approved in Google News as publisher. And back in time, there was this approval mechanism that now I'm not sure if it's still there. So basically, we did a bunch of effort to become a newspaper, to then realize that becoming a newspaper was not a good viable business, right? So there are certain things that I clearly wouldn't do, but then even that experience was good. We then pivoted that initiative. But these are all the instances where beyond my kind of daily deliverables, I was curious about something else. I did something about it, and then I was kind of obsessed enough about growing things faster that I decided to try it. Right,
Hmm.
that was and we did this across many area. It's not just myself, but even at Wise. A lot of the teams that we have that now work with me or with other people are this exercise of someone trying to go a bit beyond what the deliverable looks like within their area and try to experiment something new. Obviously you need to have the luxury of having a company that allows you to do it. So what I mean by that is the advice is to also put yourself in a position where you can always try it. In some situation you cannot try that. And in Wise case, it's not about the money, in the sense that Wise being a well funded company, it was not the reason why this was possible. it helps at times, but it was more the fact that we generally always had the freedom to try. In some other companies, maybe regardless of money, you that level of freedom is a bit less there. So like obviously, if you're in a situation like this, try to move on as fast as possible, because you have to be free to try things and eventually screw up on something. I think that's the but and then most people don't try. I think that's the bit that I even try to help people in the team. People have got good idea. They like that's what I tell them, just go and do it, right? I'm not gonna fire you because you did it. And worst case, nothing happened, right? Like
Yeah.
it cannot be the entire plan of the team this quarter, but just go ahead and do it, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
if you see something broken somewhere else that is gonna help your area, just go and fix it, right? Again, unlikely that someone will completely fire you for fixing something else, right? Clearly, there are like boundaries within teams that we try to build, right, and specialism that doesn't allow you to do that at times, but sometimes it's possible. So, yeah,
Fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. Being curious, giving things a shot, and not being too nervous to actually try something new. Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure speaking and hearing from you today. If anyone wants to find you online, where should they go? Where can they get in
Yeah, I
touch?
think the best place is LinkedIn. X. The X is a bit dead these days, but generally LinkedIn and X is where I generally publish content, jobs. We are always hiring at Wise, so I often publish roles that we have open, and yeah, and at times also in person, right? I try to within my work schedule to fit events in the industry. So, I try to attend at least a couple of events a year where it's good to actually meet people in person, right? So, yeah.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Fabrizio. It's been amazing.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.